The American Liberty ships had been designed with one guiding principle in mind: to build more ships than the Germans could sink. The result was a large, sturdy, if inelegant, freighter, constructed easily and rapidly. It was assembled with 30,000 standardized prefabricated parts that did not need to be manufactured in a shipyard. The Liberty ship prototype had taken 244 days to build, but within months, the average construction time was reduced to just 42 days. In November 1942, a public relations exercise would be staged, with the Liberty ship completed in an incredible 4 days and 15 hours. Nearly 3,000 would eventually be built, and of these, 200 would be sunk. The many millions of tons of cargo carried across the Atlantic Ocean by Liberty ships would be of inestimable value to the Allies in winning the battle and the war. In 1939, the officers and men of the Royal Navy were some of the most able, well-trained sailors in the world. The already high quality of recruits was raised even further when Winston Churchill swept away many of the old class prejudices and immeasurably boosted service morale. Shortly before the outbreak of war, the Navy's ranks were swelled by the men of the Royal Naval Reserve. The force grew from 119,000 to nearly 200,000. The inexperienced reserves soon became the backbone of the convoy escorts. The opening skirmishes of the war at sea ensured that they were trained in action, and by the time the battle began in earnest, they would be as hardened as their long-service colleagues. For the sailors of the United States Navy, the dangers and hardships of battle were being endured long before their government declared war. They shared not just the treachery of the ocean itself, but also the U-boat terror, which often struck indiscriminately. US sailors would die at sea months before the carnage of Pearl Harbor. Ashore, they were forbidden to talk of their exploits and received no public recognition. Of all the men crossing the Atlantic, none were so fundamental to the Allied effort as the men of the merchant navies. Many convoys were composed of ships from several nations, and often each ship was crewed by a mix of races and nationalities. Most were just ordinary civilians, suddenly forced under military authority and thrust into a terrifying battle of attrition. For all Allied sailors, the already harsh Atlantic was made worse by the constant pressures. The vigilance needed just to maintain station in convoy was compounded by the endless, almost unendurable tension of waiting for the inevitable attack. Ships went down in moments. Cold water killed men in minutes, and the dense Atlantic fogs could foil any attempt at rescue. Worst of all, the convoy could stop for no one. During the course of the battle, merchant sailors would suffer a higher casualty rate than any of the Allied armed forces. Since September 1939, when the British Expeditionary Force had begun crossing to France, 13 British divisions had steadily been fortifying the French border against German attack. Still, Germany had made no aggressive moves towards France, and many people now believed this long period of inaction meant that the war would soon be concluded through negotiation. This illusion was suddenly shattered on May the 9th, 1940, when the Wehrmacht unleashed 2.5 million men against France and the Low Countries. The Allied armies, taken by surprise, were soon in full retreat, harried all the way to the northern coast of France. Hundreds of thousands became trapped in an ever-decreasing pocket around the port of Dunkirk. The Royal Navy launched an audacious and brilliantly successful rescue mission, saving nearly 350,000 British and French troops from certain death or capture. The Germans turned south, and within weeks, France had sued for peace. Never before had the world balance of power shifted so dramatically. Britain now stood alone, her last ally in Europe gone. Her trade routes across the Atlantic were the key to her very survival. The Dunkirk evacuation had cost the British Navy 6 destroyers sunk and 26 badly damaged, leaving less than 80 at sea. Even worse, Great Britain herself was now threatened with invasion, and more escorts had to be diverted to watch the coasts. For Germany, the outlook could not have been better. Newly acquired naval bases on the French Atlantic coast dramatically reduced the U-boats' travelling time. Now, more U-boats could take up station, and they could remain for even longer. With Allied convoy escorts weaker than they had ever been, the U-boats seemed poised to win the war for Germany. On May the 15th, 1940, Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the German U-boat arm, had dispatched a single submarine into the Atlantic, the first to go back since the fall of Norway. The U-37 was on an unusual mission: to raise morale by proving that British shipping was still highly vulnerable. In just 2 weeks, with torpedoes and deck guns, the U-37 sank 11 merchant ships, making it the most successful tour of the battle so far. News of U-37's spectacular triumph spread rapidly through the service and gave an immeasurable boost to morale. Dönitz was delighted and immediately ordered that 2 U-boat flotillas be made ready for a return to the rich hunting ground of the Atlantic Ocean. Since the beginning of the war 9 months earlier, the German Navy had lost nearly 20 U-boats. Of these, only a handful had actually been sunk during attacks on merchant ships, while most had been lost to mines or in accidents. All had been replaced by June 1940. The U-boat construction program was currently delivering 13 every month, but was given a considerable boost by the occupation of France. The capture of French raw materials would provide the Navy with an abundance of previously scarce metals, especially copper, which was vital in submarine production. The U-boats continued to operate from their traditional base at Wilhelmshaven and the Norwegian ports, but the main